says her foot's too hurt to bear weight. A blind guy claiming he can't see, but driving a car and a boat. And a wannabe rock star with a bad arm. Does that look like limited mobility to you?
That's our guy right there. There's our mark.
Workers' comp or workers' con? Plus, the rip-off realtor.
I'm being ambushed by a news crew.
Renting and selling houses without their owners knowing it.
It's honestly crazy.
And Vince and Owen step aside. We've got real wedding crashers just in time for wedding season. Coming for food, fun.
Sometimes they're here for a whole lot more.
Like walking away with your wedding gifts. Tonight, we're on the hunt, putting on the camo to go undercover.
Can you please stop recording me?
Asking the question, who's freeloading? Here's Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. David is off tonight, but 2020 is on the case, asking the question, who's freeloading? People are getting disability from injuries they say keep them from working. Well, on this Memorial Day weekend, a lot of you will be taking it easy, and so will they, but with your money. Tonight, they're caught in the act, on tape. Here's Cecilia Vega.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are your Grand Prix finalists.
Beauty contestant Shauna Palmer appears poised to take home the crown with her bikini-ready body, winning smile, and legs that go for miles. Last April, Palmer strutted her stuff on stage in Long Beach, California, hoping to become the next Miss Toyota Grand Prix. But put on the brakes. Can you spot the major foot injury that supposedly kept this contestant from being able to do her day job? Palmer claims she hurt her left big toe working as a supermarket clerk. She said the painful injury left her with, quote, an inability to bear weight on her foot. But shortly after going to the doctor, prosecutors say she apparently had no problem working it in a pair of pumps, no less.
And she loves dirt bikes.
Insurance investigators arrested Palmer on charges of illegally collecting workers' compensation benefits totaling over $24,000.
She did not lie whatsoever regarding her foot injury.
She pleaded not guilty to 3 felony counts of fraud.
Yes, Your Honor.
You might think suspected offenders of false claims would want to avoid the spotlight. But meet Leroy Barnes, a professional dancer who claimed total disability after getting hurt on a gig. Yet investigators say he's right here, shaking his tail as one of those dancing hamsters in the Kia car commercials. Barnes stands accused of fraudulently collecting over 50 grand in disability. For now, this hamster's out of his cage. He pleaded not guilty and is free on bail. Then there's the curious case of Dan Slawowski, a Chicago area man who said he was unable to perform his job at the Department of Public Works due to a nerve condition.
Are you ready?
But city investigators say he had the nerve to perform in an extreme wrestling tournament, doing his best Hulk Hogan, climbing the ropes and fake pummeling some poor sap, all while on government-paid medical leave. Slawowski might look menacing in that ring, but he hid behind his door while answering questions from ABC's I-Team in Chicago.
What do you do?
I'm talking through my report. I don't wrestle. I have no training. I'm not a pro wrestler.
You shut up!
He's also no longer employed by the Department of Public Works. He resigned last June. So why should we fret about injury faking freeloaders?
When people submit fraudulent worker comp claims and they get paid for it, well, that causes premiums to rise. John and Dill Public pay those prices.
If only taxpayers knew what kind of benefits this next woman was receiving for a workplace injury. Madupe Martin received almost $30,000 in disability payments after claiming she hurt her ankle while working as a school janitor. The insurance company was suspicious and placed Martin under surveillance. She certainly looks hurt as she's seen visiting her doctor's office on crutches. But later she's seen running like a gazelle in sky-high heels.
What's going through my mind is she's a big old fake. She's committing fraud. She's lying to her doctors. She's lying to her employers.
But the icing on the cake for investigators was her activity on this day. She starts with another visit to the doctor, her trusty crutches doing the legwork. Later, she hooks up with her boyfriend and they head to the park. She may be too injured to go to work, but she's certainly healthy enough to get right down to business.
She is engaging in activity with this young man.
Dare I ask what you mean by activity?
Well, it appears some sexual activity.
And this is where we have to stop the tape to avoid an X rating. And investigators had seen enough too. Martin was convicted of insurance fraud and is serving 9 months in jail. Now, if you think you've seen it all, would you believe someone hired to protect and serve could also be scamming the system?
Hey, I'm Cecilia Vega from 2020. I was hoping we could chat with you for a second.
Last year, I had to chase down one in a group of New York City cops accused of faking PTSD and anxiety symptoms brought on by 9/11.
And the prosecutors are saying that essentially you're a cop who scammed the system.
I'm not a cop.
You were a cop at one point.
Vincent Lamontia's case stood out to investigators because after claiming disability, he brazenly flaunted pictures of himself on Facebook looking like he was living large.
Why don't you give me a quick comment and then we'll get out of your hair.
I really can't.
You know, they say that...
My hair is long, you're in it.
No more high rolling for him. Lamontia pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 60 days in jail plus probation. He also had to pay back almost $150,000 in restitution. And Lamontia's not the only freeloader in uniform. New York Port Authority police officer Christopher Insera was collecting almost $70 grand in disability for a painful on-the-job bicep and elbow injury that supposedly gave him, quote, limited mobility. But wait, who's that headbanger? It's our cop fronting a heavy metal band called Cousin Sleaze, of all things. Flailing his arms and flexing those muscles, the hunky metal head has since pleaded guilty to mail fraud and turned in his badge. Rocker, wrestler, beauty queen, and dancing hamster didn't exactly make it difficult for investigators to find them. After all, they are hiding in plain sight. But in most cases, the suspects are pretty coy. So when there's someone freeloading in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Enter our duo, the moocher-busting PIs, Barry and Bob, who love the thrill of the chase.
That's our guy right there. There's our mark.
Barry Kroll is part suburban soccer mom and part master of disguise. Workout look.
The secret to some of my success is being a woman. It's still pretty uncommon for people to think that women are private investigators.
She's also not afraid to use her own kid as a decoy.
It was great having that car seat in the back. It's a great prop.
Perfect. Barry gets hired by insurance companies to check up on people like this man. She says her client told her the man claimed a limited range of motion in his right knee and was in constant pain. But here he is, biking all over town, and the man's claim was dismissed. But Barry says these cases aren't always a full bust. Sometimes they're a dead end.
It's a glamorous job. Sit here and just
stare out the window. Stare out the window, and this job is not for everybody. So, but it is for me because I'm okay waiting for something to happen.
There's the sitting in your car approach, and then there's this.
There's a big tree right on the left. I think that's where we should all kind of meet.
Catching potential fraudsters is no mission impossible for Chicago-based PI and ABC News consultant Bob Keene. In his downtime, Bob likes to skydive and swim with sharks, so it's only fitting that he plans his surveillance stakeouts like an adrenaline-fueled military operation. Bob invited 2020 along as observers on a surveillance job deep in Midwest farm country at the crack of dawn.
Let's go, Bob. Let's go do this.
The mission? To get the goods on a farmer suspected of fleecing an insurance company. He claims injuries from a car accident are causing him difficulty with his daily farming operation.
So the money shot is what?
Anything he does that makes him look like he's working.
Since we're out in the bush, this job calls for some black ops.
So can I just say this is seems a little hardcore here.
Well,
This is necessary?
Here's the exact reason why we do this. We're completely getting into the elements to where there's no way that they would be able to see us. They're going to act completely normal, hopefully, and we'll capture everything that they do on tape.
Let's go.
I find myself wading through the woods in 40-degree temps.
This is where you're going to have to... Oh, me. Don't put your foot there.
Dang. We pick our way over treacherous ground.
Yeah, we need to go up.
And clamber up steep, muddy embankments.
I gotcha. Put your right foot up here. Go.
Until we reach our surveillance point.
So this is the house that we're going to be watching. We've literally walked for about a mile plus in the dark.
This is where we're going to set up. We have a perfect view of this house.
It takes 4 hours, but Bob finally spies that supposedly injured farmer lifting an object into his truck. We can't show his face because the case is still active. It hardly feels like enough to call the farmer a fraud. But Bob says the path to catching a freeloader isn't always paved in gold. Sometimes it's caked with mud.
So did you get what you came for?
We got to start. It's something for us to start building a case on.
The case has yet to be resolved, and I have yet to thaw out. Despite the tireless efforts of PIs like Barry and Bob, countless people each year keep trying to make an easy buck by faking an injury.
Get back in business here.
But our private eyes will be there.
There he is. There's our guy.
Waiting behind the curtains and running through the cornfields to get their marks.
You've got all this gear, head-to-toe camo. It seems like a lot of effort.
You have to have a creative solution. They think that they're 5 steps ahead of us. So to beat that, we have to combat it with pretty much extreme surveillance.
So you have to outsmart these guys.
Totally.
Next, it's morning in Maryland, and one woman's about to get the wake-up call of her life.
So officers are moving in right now, so let's go.
The ultimate squatter, mooching off a McMansion she doesn't own.
It's not the way you expected to wake up this morning, huh?
Forget breakfast in bed, it's busted in bed. When we return.
Imagine coming back to your house after a long absence only to find someone else living there, complete with a deed of ownership. It is the case of the rip-off realtors selling and renting properties they don't have the rights to. Our Gio Benitez goes on a police raid for a wake-up call one rip-off artist will never forget.
It's probably not every day that you make a phone call like this.
Hi, this is Shannon again. I'm being ambushed by a news crew.
But for real estate broker Shannon Lee, business as usual is business unusual.
Can you please stop recording me?
We're in this parking lot to ask why she's a bogus broker who doesn't sell houses, but allegedly steals them instead. It's a real estate ripoff popular with con artists all across the country.
A new kind of foreclosure scheme. The deals were illegal.
In case after case, this scam has targeted houses that owners walked away from after some financial trouble, stuck in limbo before bank foreclosure kicks in.
It wasn't until after she received a gas bill addressed to the deceased former owner that she did some research and found the deed, which is not in Hodge's name.
But few fraudsters were as good as police say Shannon Lee was. Her tale begins here, in this prosperous corner of Prince George's County, Maryland, on the day Laverne Green walked up to her townhouse mailbox.
You came over here to check your mail, to put that key in, and what happened?
Right, it didn't work.
Laverne had enough trouble already. Divorcing and downsizing, she and her husband had abandoned their townhouse and faced losing it to the bank. One day, she stopped by to check on things and walked into an unwelcome surprise.
The locks have changed.
And this lady comes to the door, and she said that she was renting the property. I'm like, how can you rent this property? This is my house.
Here's how. The mysterious renters said they got the place through Shannon Lee, apparently a legit real estate broker. They got her on the phone, and minutes later, Shannon zoomed up.
This lady pulls up in this black BMW. She jumps out the car, and she said, well, I bought this property through a tax sale. I asked her, did she have the deeds and everything to the house? She said, oh yeah, I got everything.
Shannon had actually taken control of Laverne's house, then turned around and rented it out.
Nobody suspected that someone would actually advertise a property they didn't own and collect rent on it.
State's Attorney Angela Alsobrooks says this type of scam only works if the real homeowner isn't around to notice. But Laverne Green not only missed her house, she also had connections.
Well, she picked the house of a person who worked for the police department, and that's bad luck.
That's right. Here's Laverne at her desk, working for the Prince George's County cops. So forget calling 911. All she had to do was walk down the hall to ask co-worker Lieutenant Charles Dooley for help.
You must have looked at this stuff and said, this case is crazy.
It's the most different case that I've worked in my career.
Dooley got a search warrant for Shannon's place and discovered deeds he says were forged for 6 homes, plus evidence of an even bigger scheme in progress.
I identified probably 15 to 20 other properties.
15 to 20?
Yeah, that had been targeted.
Dooley believes Shannon's devious scheme started with scouting trips, searching for houses that appeared vacant, grass not freshly mowed, no curtains in the windows, all signs of pending foreclosure.
So she kept notes on her own,
yes,
potentially illegal activity.
Yes.
He says she compiled these meticulous reports of potential targets, noting here that an owner had passed away, that another property was secured with 2 lockboxes, and even breaking in to take photos like these. Shannon's next step, using a blank deed transfer, adding her name as a buyer, bogus seller signatures, and a fake notary seal. The final step, walking into the county records department to officially enter the forged deed into the public record. Then police say she was ready to cash in.
We fell in love with it.
That's where unsuspecting victims, Sharice and Michael Stewart, come in. They'd answered an ad Shannon Lee had posted to rent this house.
I mean, it's everything that we wanted in the house, and the price was right.
So they signed the lease, despite some suspicious red flags.
From the outside, you can see the damage done to the locks of the door, as if someone busted in the door and changed the locks on the doors.
Shannon's excuse? She had trouble changing the locks. Okay, but even stranger, why were there no electric bills arriving from Pepco, the local utility company?
We had been calling Pepco every month like, hey, we're not getting a bill. We're afraid the power's going to be turned off. What's going on? And they can't find us in the system.
That's because the power had been shut off when the previous owner left. To get it turned back on, police say Shannon decided to fool Pepco, dangerously rigging a wire to bypass the meter and pirating the power.
Pretty gutsy.
Yeah, very gutsy.
Meanwhile, police say Shannon, along with her alleged partner in crime, Kiana Johnson, were collecting rent from this and other properties they'd stolen, and allegedly even sold one for a pile of cash.
You believe she really felt like she was going to get away with it?
Yes, absolutely. She had herself convinced that the paperwork was of good enough quality on the forgeries that I think she thought she was in the clear.
And Dooley discovered that Shannon and Kiana had taken this house hustle to a whole new level. They weren't just renting and selling the pinched properties, they were actually living in some of them too.
It's bananas. Like, it's honestly crazy.
When we come back, it's time for a house call with the Sheriff's Department.
So, Sergeant, at 6 a.m., we're going to that house. She has no idea we're coming.
That's correct. Element of surprise.
Knock, knock, the rent is due.
They're going to surround the house so that when they knock on that door, they're ready.
Stay with us.
2020 continues with Who's Freeloading? Once again, Gio Benitez.
And here's a picture of Target 2.
Police believe they're hot on the trail of 2 world-class freeloaders, Shannon Lee and Kiana Johnson, who've allegedly been amassing an illicit real estate empire on the backs of unsuspecting Maryland homeowners.
You must have felt pretty powerless.
I did. I didn't know what to do.
After Laverne Green realized her house had been stolen from under her nose, her colleagues with the local police jumped on the case.
So we're talking about stolen houses?
Yes.
What they discovered was a fraudulent real estate scheme as shameless as it was devious. Police say conniving cons Shannon Lee and Kiana Johnson not only forged documents to steal vacant homes, they kept the Plusher properties to live in themselves. Kiana moved into this sprawling 5-bedroom colonial with its big yard. The real owner, Donnie Small.
Police say she broke in, changed the locks, says it's her house, forged a deed.
Yes. It's bananas. Like, it's honestly crazy.
Donnie and her family had been forced to leave their beloved home long ago when her corporate recruiting job was transferred to California.
So here it is, Donnie. It's the first time you've been here in 3 years.
It's really sickening because you put your blood, sweat, and tears into buying your dream home, and we had to leave it because of financial situation.
Struggling to carry 2 homes, they fell behind on the payments. Police say that's when Shannon's co-conspirator, Kiana Johnson, used the forged deed to move her whole family in. Now, even though we've flown Donnie back from California to visit, she legally can't go inside.
Someone's looking from inside the house.
I see.
She's shocked to see how badly the place has been maintained.
Is this how you left it?
No. It's definitely not how I left it. Hi, guys.
We crossed the street to visit her former neighbors.
I'm okay.
Crystal White reveals that Kiana and crew sold her a story.
She came over, introduced herself. We stood on the front porch, we talked and everything. So I was like, oh, good, we got cool neighbors. They said that they were family members.
And this is the first time you're hearing that they claim to be family members. Your family members.
That is unbelievable. Well, yeah, but then I know why they would do it, because then you probably aren't going to say anything if you think it's my family.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say anything at all.
She says Kiana even invited the neighbors over for a barbecue. Still, something just didn't seem right.
Like after a couple of the cookouts and stuff, I was like, I do not think that they are related to Donnie and David.
Finally, a friend did alert Donnie, and police evicted Kiana's family. Yet hours later, they moved right back in, then had the gall to sue Donnie's family to keep living in the place for free. Now Donnie has a plea for Kiana.
Stop suing us, because we're not the ones who are doing something wrong. You're doing things wrong to us and damaging our lives.
But today, after a year-long ordeal, help is finally on the way.
So, Sergeant, it's 6 a.m. We're going to that house. She has no idea we're coming.
That's correct. Element of surprise.
Sergeant Lisa Smith's team from the Sheriff's Department in Prince George's County, Maryland, has a warrant for Kiana Johnson's arrest for felony theft, burglary, forgery, and falsifying documents.
So officers are moving in right now. They're going to surround the house so that when they knock on that door, they're ready for whatever she may do, whether she decides to run or answer the door. So let's go.
Ready for trouble, Smith and her officers are wearing bulletproof vests.
And we're keeping a safe distance right now because, as you say, anything could happen.
Anything could happen. 10-4. She's in custody. We can move up a little bit.
She's in custody.
Minutes later, the officers have roused Kiana Johnson from her bed and emerged from the house.
Kiana, Gio Benitez with ABC's 2020. Did you really think you would be able to convince people that this was your house? Are you sorry for what you've done? It's not the way you expected to wake up this morning, huh? Donnie, hey there. I realize it's like 3:30 in the morning for you right now, but I just wanted to let you know that Kiana was just arrested.
Shannon was also cuffed and booked, shutting down their alleged scheme, but leaving behind a mess. Donnie Small and Laverne Green had to file expensive eviction proceedings to get their houses back. And that family who had rented from Shannon, they lost thousands of dollars when they had to quickly move out and find a new home.
Let's talk about those forged deeds.
So back at that parking lot the day we caught up with Shannon Lee, she was out on bail and in no mood to apologize.
The truth will come out.
The truth will come out? Mm-hmm. Why'd you steal those houses?
I didn't steal the houses.
That's not what the owners of the houses say.
Forgery master Shannon Lee later missed a court hearing, claiming she'd been in the hospital. She handed the judge hospital admission records to prove it. But guess what? They were forged too. So he moved her into this modern, multi-unit dwelling, the county jail. And just this week, we've learned that she'll serve 2 years after pleading guilty to burglary and forgery.
She's obviously a very bright woman who decided to use her talents in ways that would have her go to jail.
Donnie Small is thrilled that co-conspirator Kiana Johnson was finally convicted of burglary and theft. She will be sentenced next month.
If somebody was telling me the story, I don't know how much I would believe it.
As for scammed renter Sharice Stewart, what does she have to say to the allegedly duplicitous duo?
I can't say it on camera. God bless you.
So here's our question for tonight. Have you ever gotten involved with crazy real estate deals, shady brokers trying to cheat you in some way? Let us know on Twitter. Use the hashtag ABC2020. And when we come back, wedding crashers showing up and stealing a lot more than just a slice of cake. Stay with us.
When we return, Wedding Crashers. That's the movie. This is for real. And this is the steal. Mooching away with the wedding money.
How much do you think is sitting over there?
40, hoping
1,000?
more. Yeah.
Wow, so you better have some security guards on that.
Crashing the dance floor. Next.
Maybe you saw the movie Wedding Crashers. It was funny, unless it happens to you in real life. And actually, it is happening more and more. Strangers not just crashing the party, but stealing from it. Tonight, Paula Farah showing up at someone else's wedding, but does anyone even notice?
I now pronounce you man and wife.
I'm ready to get drunk.
Who is that?
Who is that? The 3 words a wedding crasher never wants to hear. It's bad for business. Wedding crashers are skilled at turning your special day into their special day. Immortalized on film by Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, most newlyweds hope to avoid crashers on their big day, but not this bride and groom.
When they started playing Shout, I saw some champagne popping. I was looking for it.
Dan and Jessica Mealy got married here in Westchester, New York when we decided to soft crash their wedding. They were great sports. The beautiful bride even confessing she might want to dabble in a crash one day.
You don't mind that we're crashing your wedding, do you?
No, see, that's on our bucket list. We've always wanted to crash a wedding.
You have?
Yeah, we haven't yet, but it's on our to-do.
So what is this fascination some have with going where they're not invited? Is it the free food, the open bar? That's what one bride and groom wanted to know after their wedding photos and videos included these fun-loving freeloaders.
I had asked around my side of the family and my husband's side of the family and made sure that they weren't somebody who I just hadn't met before, and nobody had known them.
The two can be seen boogieing on the dance floor, drinks in hand, practically going out of their way to be noticed. And now the perfect strangers are permanently part of this newlyweds photo album.
They're all over mine, and I can't really focus on the people that I want to focus on.
Krista Riley took to Facebook to try and match a name with a face, and the local media turned up the drama.
The mystery of the identity of the wedding crashers has been solved.
For Krista, at least, turns out the wedding crashers themselves noticed they had gone from the hunter to the hunted and reached out privately to the bride to apologize. Krista wouldn't reveal their identities. She says she forgives, but with this wedding album, how can she forget?
I think it's tacky. I think it's rude because that's somebody's special day.
So you may not know their name, but you probably recognize the type. Wedding crashers are not shy. It's not in their DNA. They're here to eat, they're here to dance, and they're here to drink. Sometimes they're here for a whole lot more.
Watch as this guy enters the beautiful Tustin Ranch Golf Club in California. Cops say he swiped up all the cash and gift cards at a wedding reception here. The suspect checks to see if the coast is clear, then covers the gift box with his jacket and makes a quick getaway. Cops picked him up about a month later and charged him with burglary and grand theft. This Pennsylvania guy was also caught after slipping into receptions and stealing $12 grand in cash, gifts, even the bride's shoes. He finally got an invitation, but from a judge who sentenced him to a minimum of 4 years. Back at the Miele wedding, he spotted their gift box. It was positioned right where the experts say it should be, behind the couple, away from the exit, and with security standing nearby.
How much do you think is sitting over there?
40, 30, 40, hoping
Thousands?
more. Yeah.
Wow, so you better have some security guards on that.
We do.
So if I tried to make out with that gift box right now and make a mad dash for the exit, what would you do to me?
I tackle you.
I'm a girl.
I know, but he told me I have to.
Wedding crashers thrive because most guests at a celebration don't want to ask that awkward question, who is that? But when they do, things can get pretty heated. Just watch this scene from What Would You Do?
We wanted to see what would happen when guests discovered crashers at a wedding.
The bride and groom were in on it, but the guests were not.
Who do you know?
Who do you know? Are you here with Bridget's side or
With John's.
John's
Yeah, I
side?
know John.
Bride and groom both don't know you.
Okay. Family.
Sit down. You sit down. You don't crash people's wedding like that.
I'm sorry. I can leave right now.
No, you're not leaving there. You're going to be arrested.
If wedding crashing seems like a young man's game, don't tell that to Sherry Stanley.
I was excited. I was filled with a lot of trepidation.
The writer from Ohio decided it was time to break out of her comfort zone and break into a reception, complete with cover story.
My name was Shelley. If they asked who I was there with Jim Miller, who used to work with the groom.
Sherry had planned it all out, socializing with guests, enjoying a cold beer, until the bride threw something at her. The bouquet landed at Sherry's feet, and all eyes were now on the wedding crasher.
Everyone in the room was staring at me.
It was the one thing Sherry hadn't planned on, but Sherry is a crasher with a conscience. Before exiting, she left a card and gift for the happy couple. So if you must crash a wedding, crash with class.
Okay, and Mokalupa. Mokalupa. Yeah, to wedding crashers.
Absolutely.
Mazel tov.
Cheers.
So, have you ever been at a wedding where there's been a crasher? If so, tweet us. Use the hashtag ABC2020.
Next, we've got him in our sights. The guy who's behind the wheel of that boat, but lying that he's blind to collect a fortune in disability.
So you don't drive at all, is that right?
A tale of checks, lies, and videotape.
Why did you lie in the interview?
When 2020 returns.
It is a real-life case of blind man's bluff. A man who's been pretending to be blind in order to cash in big on disability. But there was one thing he really was blind to. Those hidden cameras set up to catch him in the act. Here's Rebecca Jarvis.
We're at approximately 8:03 a.m. conducting surveillance on Lawrence Pop.
You're watching a federal sting operation in progress. Lawrence Pop has no idea he's being tailed by government agents, and they might want to exercise caution, because no matter what, you're in Pop's blind spot. At least that's what the Milwaukee businessman led people to believe when he was claiming he was too blind to drive. But now all eyes are on him as federal agents tail Pop. Larry had been collecting Social Security disability payments for his blindness for years, all the while living the high life, traveling the world and spending like there's no tomorrow.
Lawrence Pop is walking towards the Social Security office.
He's here today to make sure those payments keep on coming. He ditches the car a block away so as not to attract attention.
Mr. Pop, can you come here, please?
In fact, by the time his interview with a government claims rep begins, there's no mention of any car.
So you don't drive at all, is that right?
What Pop can't see is that agents have set him up in a simple but elegant trap.
Did you need help from others?
Yes.
Listen as this disarming claims rep cleverly extracts details about Larry's painful life without sight.
So you can't really read anything that's
No, I usually have
unmagnified.
friends, right? No.
You can't do almost anything that you used to do.
No, my lifestyle has changed radically.
But the tape reveals one thing Lawrence Pop is very good at: lying.
Do you declare, under penalty of perjury, that the information you've given me is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I have seen tons and tons of people like this in my career.
You remember ABC News consultant Bob Keane. He's that private eye whose weapon of choice is a video camera. We asked Keane to give us the tale of the tape.
People in Pop's position get comfortable. They get comfortable to the point of they're getting away with it, so I'm gonna get away with more. I'm gonna get away with more. And they're gonna keep trying raising that bar. He took it to the extreme.
Pop actually did have legitimate vision impairment back in 2004 when he signed up for disability benefits. But he promised to notify the department if his medical condition improved or if he were to get a job or generate income. Well, his eyes did get better, and he generated plenty of income. But freeloading Larry decided to keep those details to himself.
Can you use a computer?
Well, no, because what happens is that when I start doing that, my eyes get very strained and then I get a lot of pain.
But his coworkers saw a very different side of Larry. His then VP, Dave Hartlerode, says Larry was a fixture at the office, despite supposedly being unable to work.
And what would he do at work?
Basically working from his computer.
On his computer?
Email correspondence with people within our industry.
How did he get to work when he was telling Social Security that he couldn't drive and he couldn't see?
All I know that he was driving to work.
He drove himself?
Yes.
Meanwhile, investigators say Larry was living large. His car spotted outside the Milwaukee Athletic Club.
We picked him back up at the Milwaukee Athletic Club,
where memberships cost thousands of dollars a year. There were also trips to Italy, Florida, the Caymans. He even spent time driving a motorboat towing water skiers around a lake.
Oh, yeah. Larry is a person that likes money, wants to always be in charge.
Oh, yes. Then there's the ex-wife, Kimberly Pop, who confirms Larry's lavish spending but said the same rules did not apply to her.
I was on a strict budget. We had nothing joint together. He would go out and buy cars without me knowing.
You know, about this.
Not only could he overspend, he could overact, at times appearing to tear up at the Social Security office in a truly Oscar-worthy performance.
This is kind of reliving it, so I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No. Yeah, I don't mean to do that to you.
It's got to be done.
Even Pop's own lawyer didn't buy his act.
Is he really crying?
He was definitely not telling the truth here, and he knew he was not telling the truth. And was part of it an act? Perhaps.
So what do you think it was about Larry's case that tipped them off?
Well, I know what it was. You had a ex-wife who dropped the dime.
Right.
Yes, Kimberly is indirectly responsible for helping to take down the bogus blind man. The tipping point when the IRS came after her, claiming she owed thousands in back taxes. It turns out Lawrence Pop had applied for benefits not just for himself, but for the entire family.